Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast. Good morning. It's Thursday, the 9th of October. I'm Caroline Hepke in London. Coming up today, Israel and Hamas agree a deal to secure the release of all hostages held in Gaza in a significant breakthrough. French President Emmanuel Macron says he'll name a new prime minister by tomorrow evening. Plus, why the unquenchable global demand for AI chips is now counting on a small European city to keep up its momentum, and the pressure is growing to make it work. Let's start with a roundup of our top stories. Israel and Hamas have agreed a deal for the release of all hostages held by the Palestinian militant group in Gaza. The phased agreement would see Israel release almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and withdrawing troops in Gaza to an agreed-upon line. It marks a major breakthrough in the US Qatari-brokered negotiations to end their 2-year war. Speaking on Fox News' Hannity show after the agreement was announced, President Trump praised the wide range of countries who helped to achieve the deal.
The whole world came together, to be honest. So many countries that you wouldn't have even thought of it. They came together. The world has come together around this deal. And that's something I would say that without that wouldn't happen. So many countries that you wouldn't have thought of have wired their best wishes and their commitment to do whatever is necessary. The countries surrounding have all signed. I mean, they're all signed up.
The US president speaking there to Fox News. The deal will see Hamas free about 20 people who are still alive, who were taken during the October 2023 attack, alongside the remains of more than 24 people who died in captivity. Meanwhile, aid to Gaza would be resumed as part of the deal. If the agreement holds, it will mark a major step towards ending the conflict. The deal would also be a major diplomatic victory for Trump, who had presented a 20-point plan aimed at ending the conflict last week. The statement from Hamas also included an extraordinary shift in tone, adding that the group valued, quote, the efforts of US President Donald Trump. Wael Al-Zayat is an associate fellow of the Middle East Institute and says this could be a major turning point in the war.
Based on what the American President Donald Trump has said, and some other countries have confirmed, it looks promising, and it would be a huge deal. This is the biggest breakthrough since the conflict began.
Wael Al-Zayat speaking there. But many questions remain about whether a ceasefire can hold and the next steps in the peace plan. Tuesday marked 2 years since Hamas's October 7th attacks on Israel, which triggered the conflict, killing 1,200 people and abducting another 250. Around 67,000 Palestinians have died in the subsequent conflict, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. More than 450 Israeli soldiers have also been killed. So that's what is happening in the Middle East. Let's go to France next. Emmanuel Macron says that he will name a new prime minister by tomorrow evening. That's after 2 days of crunch talks with political leaders, which were led by outgoing Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu, aimed at building support to pass a budget. Speaking to France 2 television yesterday evening, Lecornu said there's potential for compromise in Parliament after the talks.
What I can say tonight, after my discussions, is there is an absolute majority in the National Assembly which refuses a new dissolution. I feel a narrow path is still possible. It's difficult. But I told the President of the Republic the prospects of new snap legislative elections are receding. And I think the situation allows for the appointment of a new Prime Minister within the next 48 hours.
Outgoing French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu speaking there. He also said that the next premier should have no ambitions to run for president in 2027. Failure by a new Prime Minister to form a cabinet would mean that Emmanuel Macron would either have to call a parliamentary election, appoint yet another candidate, or resign himself. China has tightened its export controls on rare earths to include items manufactured abroad. The move expands restrictions on an industry that has fueled trade tension between Beijing and Washington. The country's Ministry of Commerce has said that exporters of items that use rare earths sourced from China will now need to obtain an export license. China is also likely to block exports to foreign arms manufacturers and some semiconductor firms. Beijing has previously used its dominance of the sector as leverage in negotiations with the US. These new restrictions come just weeks before President Trump and Xi Jinping are due to meet in person to strike a broader trade deal. HSBC plans to take Hang Seng Bank private in a major bet on the future of Hong Kong. The London-based bank is spending $14 billion to buy the third of Hang Seng that it doesn't already own. HSBC CEO Georges Elhedry says it will deliver shareholder value.
This is an investment for growth. This is an investment in Hong Kong, one of our home markets and one of our key markets. Hang Seng is an iconic brand in Hong Kong. It's a leading local bank. It has a fantastic customer franchise, have a very strong financial position. And the idea here is to effectively take private Hang Seng.
The HSBC CEO there speaking exclusively to Bloomberg. The deal values Hang Seng at $37 billion. It comes as Hong Kong is trying to re-emerge from China's real estate slump. Shares in Hang Seng Bank rose 26%, while HSBC's shares fell 6% in early trading in Hong Kong. Here in the UK, Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch is promising to cut taxes on house buying in an attempt to change the fortunes of her party. The pledge to cut stamp duty was a surprise announcement at the end of her party's annual conference. The Tories have seen their popularity collapse following 14 years in government until 2024, with some warning that they may cease to exist as a major party. Badenoch says she'll change that.
We need bold ideas. We need a positive vision for this country and a plan to deliver it. We need a new approach that delivers a stronger economy and stronger borders. We owe that to our children.
Badenoch's appeal to the party faithful comes as the polls put Conservatives in fourth place. The historic fall from grace has led to many people questioning how long the current leader can remain in her position. Those are some of our global and top news stories this morning. In terms of the markets, let's get to those. So the dollar right now is weakening 0.2%. We've also seen gold pull back, down 1% yesterday, and the gold spot price is down 0.2% this morning after, of course, hitting a record high above $4,000 an ounce. But it's also oil that is edging lower after the peace deal, the first phase at least of a peace deal in the Middle East. Brent crude futures at the moment down 0.4 at $66 the barrel. US benchmarks, stock benchmarks that is, closed at yet another record yesterday. The Nasdaq had its best session in 7 weeks. The AI boom still firmly in place. Stock futures, though, this morning for the US, a little bit positive. We're up by about 0.1%, less than 0.1% for the S&P 500. US Stocks 50 futures, though, are in the red. And this as we got Fed minutes yesterday, caution over rate cuts because of the worries around inflation. 10-year Treasury yield steady at 4.12. So those are the markets this hour. In a moment, we'll bring you more on Macron's plan to reappoint a new Prime Minister by tomorrow, plus why the global AI boom hinges on ASML's huge expansion in one small Dutch city. Now, let's go to our top story, though. Israel and Hamas have agreed the terms for the release of all hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. This is part of a US and Qatari-brokered deal to end their 2-year war. Joining us now is Bloomberg's Stuart Livingston-Wallace, who heads our coverage of the Middle East and North Africa. Stuart, good morning. What exactly has been agreed in terms of Israeli hostages and troops and aid for Palestinians and Palestinian prisoners?
Yes, I mean, as you said, it is very much phase one, but it's a very significant change in the landscape, and certainly the most consequential agreement we've had in months, arguably since the war began a couple of years ago. So what seems to have been agreed to is, as you said, this exchange of the remaining hostages, both those that are alive and those that are already deceased, in return for a large number of Palestinian prisoners, and based on Trump's Truth Social post, there will also be a withdrawal by Israeli troops to an agreed upon line. Now, the fine details of that, I think, are still to be agreed. We anticipate that the Israeli cabinet will be meeting later today to sign off on this, and I think one potential area of contention will be just who is on the Palestinian prisoner list, because I know some of the names that had been put forward earlier would be very controversial as far as the Israelis are concerned. However, I think there is great optimism from all sides that they are making headway, and certainly, again, based on Trump's comments, he anticipates that the hostages would be out probably on Monday. Obviously, it will take some time to create a safe corridor for them to come out. And of course, they will be, we presume, in different locations and held by different groups within Gaza. So, it will probably take some time to get done. But again, a very, very consequential change in the landscape. Yeah, indeed. And so President Trump, speaking to Fox News, saying he is, quote, very confident there'll be peace in the Middle East. I mean, could it be? Is this what people think in the region? Could this be the end of what has been a devastating conflict? I mean, I think certainly, in terms of Gaza, the prospects for that are certainly looking a lot more positive than they have done for a couple of years. In terms of the wider Middle East, there are some more serious issues and far more widespread thinking, in particular about, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, and so on. Those are very complex issues as well. But specifically with regard to Gaza, at least on the face of it, it appears that we could potentially be moving into, a much more peaceful phase. But as everyone knows, there are a great many issues to resolve there, not least the reconstruction, the future governance, the disarmament of Hamas. The list is very, very long, and it's going to be a very difficult process to get done. But this phase one certainly sets it on that path, and I think there is goodwill from all sides to try and, get something done in the next several months. What has been the reaction in the region? Because we mentioned that it's also a Qatari-brokered deal. What has been the response in the region to this sort of first phase? Again, I think very, very positive. And there has been a big push, certainly from the Arab states. I mean, notably, Qatar has been a very important mediator in this, but Egypt as well, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the list is very long. And I think to some extent, the path that we saw with the Abraham Accords that were signed in Trump's first term, I think a desire to return to that as kind of the path forward of some sort of reconciliation and joint recognition, and a more peaceful approach to regional affairs. And I think that's largely based on two things. One is most of those states have very ambitious goals in terms of transforming their economies away from sort of being fossil fuel led to a far wider industrial base, and they can't do that in an environment where there is constant warfare, which is exactly what we've seen over the last couple of years. Very widespread conflicts. So a great deal of optimism, I think, and a great deal of hope that, again, this is the start of something far wider, far more consequential for the region, and in terms of generating that prosperity that they're all after. Indeed. So potentially a very significant breakthrough in the Middle East. Stuart, thank you so much for being with us. That is Bloomberg's Stuart Livingston-Wallace, who heads our coverage of the Middle East. Thank you so much for being with us. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this. So, also want to think about what's happening in France and political turmoil there. There is now a new deadline. Emmanuel Macron says that he'll name a new Prime Minister by tomorrow evening. That's after outgoing Premier Sébastien Lecornu signalled progress with other parties in 2 days of last-ditch talks. And our own Stephen Carroll is in Paris for us this morning, has been there for the last few days, really keeping close tabs on this. Good morning, Stephen. Why is Macron waiting another 48 hours then to name his next Prime Minister?
Well, the key thing here is that Emmanuel Macron is going to name another Prime Minister. That's the conclusion that Sébastien Lecornu was able to come to after 2 days of these desperate negotiations with political parties, both allies and opposition. Now, the message that he delivered in his TV interview last night is that there was a majority of MPs who don't want new elections to the National Assembly. He also says he believes there is a platform of stability, those are the words he used, and a way forward that could allow a budget to be passed by the end of the year. So that means elections look to be off the table for now. The president will try again with another prime minister to get a budget agreed on the basis set by these talks. That would be the sixth prime minister in 2 years. As for the timing, it does give Emmanuel Macron some time to come up with someone to do this job, but it also actually plays around a major event that's happening in France here today. There's a state ceremony to honour the late Justice Minister Robert Badinter for his work on civil liberties, including the abolition of the death penalty 44 years ago today. That's a huge state event involving the president, and they want to separate the politics from that event happening today.
So who do you think it could be then to be the next Prime Minister? And what sort of budget then would that person actually be able to pass?
Well, look, Sébastien Lecornu was asked about this repeatedly last night. He said that it was up to the president to decide. He said that it shouldn't be anyone who has ambitions for the presidential election in 2027, pointing us towards this idea of maybe a technocratic figure. That's something that he says is a potential solution. So that's one option. One thing we know is that it won't be Sébastien Lecornu. He said that his mission is over as far as he's considered. He does not want to be Prime Minister anymore. As for the budget, Lecornu says there will be a plan presented on Monday that is in keeping with the constitutional timetable. Now, he said that it won't be a perfect plan. There'll be lots to debate. And he again said the general agreement among parties is that the deficit would be under 5%. That's something for markets then to take heart from. But building a consensus on a budget now seems to be centring on the thorny political issue of pension reform. Freezing the current changes that raise the retirement age is a key demand of left-wing parties. It comes at a huge financial cost, at least $3 billion by 2027, according to Lecornu. He says that's an area for the next Prime Minister to negotiate, but he said it will be a key challenge. Again, he warned if there's no budget, he described it as being absolutely dramatic consequences for France.
Stephen, thank you. Now, I want to get back to the AI story. ASML is planning a major expansion in Eindhoven in the next 6 months. Bloomberg's Amsterdam bureau chief, Dasha Afanasieva, is with us this morning. Good morning, Dasha. What does ASML want to do in Eindhoven?
Hello. It wants to build a massive expansion site. The total area is around 100 hectares. And there it wants to use the site to help it boost production and to grow sales to as much as 60 billion euros by 2030. Now, a lot of those sales will be its most extreme, most expensive, most advanced, sophisticated, extreme ultraviolet machines, which are an integral part of the AI food chain, because they have greater computational ability and are able to process quicker and cheaper than other chips. And ASML is sort of the bottleneck because it's the only company in the world that makes these most advanced lithography machines to make these chips.
So how are they going to deliver on that expansion? It needs the support of government, of local people, workers, surely?
Absolutely. The company has been wanting to do this for a while, but it can't do it alone because the city, Eindhoven, is very densely populated, like a lot of the Netherlands. There's already kind of a shortage of housing, a shortage of skilled workers. So it really needs the support of the whole kind of ecosystem. And that's why the government, both local and national, have dedicated around 4.1 billion euros. Together, there's a bit from private companies in there as well to drive this expansion, to improve housing, to improve infrastructure, to improve education, but there's still so much to do. For example, the area where ASML plans to expand currently has no electricity. And as you can imagine, that's quite crucial. And everything moves, at maybe what feels for corporate like quite a slow pace, because you have to get all these approvals, you have to get everybody on board. And what the mayor of Eindhoven told us is what they don't want to do is to kind of be rash about it and end up with a Silicon Valley, which, in his opinion, is a very unequal place to live. And the only people that can afford to live there are kind of, very rich.
That's interesting. But obviously it's massively important for ASML and also for Europe, given it's the largest company by stock market value in Europe.
It is the largest company by stock market value, and that reflects just what a bottleneck, what sort of a linchpin it is in this very, very complicated global chip making process. So we don't have massive chip makers, but ASML is the most relevant thing we've got. And they've, back into the 2000s, they made this EUV bet, and now they've invested into an AI company. So it's very much front and centre of their mind.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.